In this video we are having a lens off. Sony 24-105mm f4 versus Sigma 24-70mm f2.8 art for Sony E-mount. Let's do some housekeeping very quickly. If you do enjoy this kind of content, photography, video, lenses, cameras, reviews, tips, tutorials, please consider subscribing. So let's see how these two compare to each other from the build point of view, the performance and the value, and see which one actually is a better buy today. So let's start from the build. The Sigma lens is marginally larger than the Sony. It has got larger lens hood as well, which obviously makes it tiny bit longer. The weight wise, Sigma is also marginally heavier, but not much. If I pick these two in the dark, I would probably struggle to guess which one is which, because yes, it is tiny bit heavier, but not much. The build quality, they both feel really nice. The Sigma has got a larger focusing ring and it turns smoother than the Sony seems to be a little bit looser, which is great for if you're doing video for manual focusing. You want some resistance there, feels great. Sony also feels a little bit more plasticky than the Sigma. Maybe it's only because the Sigma has got the parts which are very shiny and Sony is all the same kind of matte plastic. Maybe that's all there is to it. The lens hood, Sony is just standard plastic all around the same. The Sigma hood has got this rubberized rim around the hood, and it's very, not sticky, but attracts, it's kind of soft. It attracts the dust from inside your camera back to it. So after using it for a couple of weeks, it actually looks like it's been in rotation for about a year. Yeah, I'm presuming it's gonna clean, but it's just that kind of little cosmetic difference between this and the standard plastic Sony hood. The buttons on the lenses, they both have a similar layouts. They both have autofocus and manual switches on both of them. They both have focus hold buttons, which can be programmed to whatever function you want them to be. The difference is the Sony, it clicks really nicely and it's quite firm, when Sigma's, it's kind of spongy. It feels not loose, but more spongy and kind of more clicky. These are all very, very minor observations. They're not problems, any of those. The difference is on the Sigma lens, we got an extra button, which is the lock, which Sony hasn't got. I presume the lock is for this, maybe I'm wrong, but you can only lock it when the lens is fully zoomed out at 24mm. It clicks in to lock, and now you can't pull the barrel out. So I guess this is to lock when you store the lenses this way up, the glass up, and you want to pull them out from your camera bag or a case without actually pulling the zoom barrel out. So if I unlock it and I pull the lens, you can actually extend it. When I push it back in and lock it, you can't. I guess this is what this is for, but it has got a lock button when the Sony lens hasn't. Sony has got the image stabilization built into the lens, the OSS, which helps stabilizing the handheld shot, especially on the long end of the zoom, when Sigma hasn't. Yes, if you're using the camera with a built-in image stabilization, this will help, but it doesn't really work the same as the stabilization on the Sony lens. Here's a couple of examples of me vlogging with both lenses, and I think the Sigma just gets a little bit more vibration and micro jitter than the Sony does. But it's only minor, and it's not, again, a problem at all. The both lenses also have got weather sealing. The performance of these lenses, the difference, there's no really difference apart from the technical specs. The Sony is f4, so the aperture is not as wide as the Sigma, which is f2.8. I have shot a lot of stuff with the Sony already, and I do like it. The fact that it does have a nice bokeh, even f4, and the fact that it doesn't really stop me from shooting in lower light situations, it does really work. But when I've tried the Sigma 24-70 f2.8, from the first picture and the first video I have done with this lens, I was actually very nicely surprised, because the bokeh is, obviously because it's a wider aperture, much more defined and smoother. So for example, shooting at 24 on both lenses, you get significantly less separation and blurred background on the Sony than the Sigma, because the difference in the aperture. I wouldn't say that the wide aperture helps in a low light situation, which it does, but it creates a different look from the Sony. The huge difference is that with the Sigma you can go to f4 if needed, but you can't go to f2.8 with the Sony. So the photos and videos, they do perform very, very well side by side. I have to say that Sigma actually feels like a native lens. It doesn't feel like something which doesn't belong on the Sony camera. It feels as good as any quality Sony lens like this one. So comparing the quality of the picture at that price range, you expect high quality, and you do get high quality from both of these lenses. Video and autofocusing in video works equally well on both. It's smooth, it's quick, but not too quick. It doesn't hunt, it just works every time you do it. So very, very, very close comparison. So far I think these lenses stack up very, very nicely next to each other. So let's talk about the value and the price of these. At the moment, the Sony 24-105 f4 sells in UK for approx about £1,199, when Sigma sells for £1,049. So the Sigma actually is £150 cheaper, but is the £150 difference in quality? I don't think so. So if you go for a Sony and you shop around, you probably buy it significantly cheaper. If you're gonna go for second hand, you can definitely get it cheaper than the Sigma lens. Now, a lot of people say the extra reach is worth the extra money, the 105. I don't think actually is, because I'm coming from the prime lens background, and I really think if you can't quite reach with the lens, all you have to do is walk forward with your camera. So I don't think for me it's a huge difference. The difference it makes the reach, the 105mm, is that you get a creamier and more compressed background because the focal length is longer. But the focal length isn't as long on the Sigma lens, but you get a wider aperture, so it kind of balances out in between. If you do kind of photography when you can't actually go forward and you need that extra reach, then 105 is no-brainer. But for everyday photography, I think the 70mm is definitely good focal length for most of situations. So the conclusion, which lens is better and which one should you buy? Well, this is a very hard question because they both equally good. For me personally, Sigma wins just a little bit because the aperture, and it's not because of the better low light performance, but because the photos and videos look slightly different. I do like the shallow depth of field, and it's easier to achieve with the Sigma lens. Also, if you're buying brand new, Sigma is slightly cheaper. The build wise and the quality of the footage and photographs, they both score equally. I would say there's very, very little in between these two. If you prefer and if you want native lens, the Sony on your Sony camera, this should be your choice. If you didn't know this is Sigma lens and you are shooting with this on your any Sony camera, you have no doubt that this is a very high quality lens. So the answer is, for me, is the Sigma. Sigma wins. I hope you've enjoyed this little video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing. It really helps to grow my channel. And yeah, thanks for watching and see you next time. If you are on the Sigma hood, it's got I presume this is what it is. I presume this is what it is. I think that's the thing.